The lower markets of Velcara Station smelled like rust, alien spices, and desperation. Maya Collins held her breath as she pushed through the crowded walkway, trying not to bump into the dozens of species that filled every available space. Vendors shouted in 20 different languages, hawking everything from stolen tech to questionable food items. This was her least favorite part of working as a merchant apprentice. But her boss had sent her to pick up a shipment of solar batteries, and she had no choice but to navigate this chaos. She was 23 years old and had left Earth 6 months ago with dreams of seeing the galaxy. So far, the reality was a lot more dirty corridors and boring inventory checks than she had imagined. But it was still better than staying home, still better than wondering what was out there among the stars. Maya found the battery vendor and completed her transaction quickly. She turned to leave, eager to get back to the cleaner upper levels of the station. That was when she saw the cage. It sat in the corner of a cluttered stall surrounded by broken tools and scrap metal. Inside was something small and gray, barely moving. Most people walked right past without a second glance. But Maya stopped. She had always been the kind of person who noticed things others missed. The kind of kid who brought home injured birds and stray cats, much to her mother's frustration. The creature in the cage was about the size of a house cat, covered in dull gray scales. Its breathing was shallow and labored. Its eyes were closed and its body was so thin that Maya could see the shape of its bones beneath the scales. But there was something about the way it was built, the structure of its small skull, the tiny folded membranes against its sides that might have been wings once. "You buying or staring?" The vendor's voice startled her. He was a Krillian with 4 arms and skin like dark leather. His name tag said Vex. That thing's been dying for days. Should probably just space it, but haven't gotten around to it. Maya felt a surge of anger. "You're just letting it suffer?" Vex shrugged with all 4 shoulders. "It came in a bulk lot. Thought it might be worth something, but turns out it's just a defective reptile. Can't sell it, can't get it to eat. Not worth the cage space." She looked at the creature again. Even dying, even suffering, there was something about it that pulled at her. Maybe it was the shape of its body, so perfectly designed even in its weakened state. Maybe it was just her inability to walk away from something in pain. "How much?" she asked. Vex laughed, a harsh sound. "You serious? Thing's dead weight. Literally." He looked her up and down, taking in her simple clothes and the small bag of purchases. "Tell you what, human. 3 credits and you can take the cage too. Save me the trouble of disposal. 3 credits. That was all the personal money Maya had left after paying for her meals this week. It was stupid. It was impractical. The creature would probably die anyway, and she would have wasted money she could barely afford to waste, but she found herself reaching for her credit chip anyway. "Deal," she said. The transaction took seconds. Vex seemed eager to be rid of both the creature and her. As Maya bent to pick up the cage, careful not to jostle the dying animal inside, she heard a voice behind her. Humans and their sentiment. It was a Thaxian merchant from the neighboring stall, his snake-like body coiled on his platform, wasting credits on dead things. "Your species never learns," a few other vendors chuckled. Maya felt her face burn with embarrassment, but she ignored them. She lifted the cage carefully, cradling it against her chest. The creature inside shifted slightly, and for just a moment its eyes flickered open. They were gold, brilliant, blazing gold like molten metal or captured sunlight. The color was there for perhaps a second, maybe less, before fading back to cloudy gray. Maya blinked. Had she imagined it? But the marketplace had gone silent. Every conversation within 30 feet stopped mid-sentence. Aliens of a dozen species froze in place, their attention suddenly locked on the small cage in Maya's arms. Vex's 4 arms had gone rigid, his eyes wide. The Thaxian merchant's mouth hung open, his forked tongue visible. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4. 5. Then someone shouted, "That's a phoenix!" Chaos erupted. A massive Korvathi warrior shoved through the crowd, his hand reaching for the cage. "I was negotiating for that creature." "The sale is invalid," his voice boomed across the marketplace. 50,000 credits, another voice yelled. "I'll pay 50,000 right now." 100,000. "That's mine." I saw it first. Maya didn't wait to hear more. She clutched the cage to her chest and ran. Her heart hammered as she pushed through the crowd, ignoring the shouts behind her. Hands grabbed at her clothes, her bag, the cage. She twisted away from a Valorian's reaching claws and ducked under a Threll's grasping appendage. The marketplace was a maze, and Maya had learned its layout during her months on the station. She darted down a side passage, then another, taking turns at random. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. More voices had joined the chase. She heard the heavy footfalls of multiple species, all converging on her position. Her lungs burned. The cage was heavier than it looked, and the creature inside shifted with each of her jarring steps. She wanted to apologize to it, to promise she would stop running soon, but she had no breath for words. Maya spotted a maintenance corridor and made a split-second decision. She hit the access panel, praying her general worker ID would open it. The door slid open with a hiss and she threw herself inside. The corridor was dark and narrow, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. She could hear dripping water and the hum of machinery. She ran until her legs felt like they would give out, taking turn after turn in the service passages. Finally, when she could no longer hear pursuit, she slowed to a walk, then stopped entirely. She leaned against the cold metal wall, gasping for air. The creature in the cage made a small sound, something between a chirp and a whistle. Maya looked down at it. Its eyes were open again, that same brilliant gold, and this time they didn't fade. The creature looked at her with an intelligence that made her shiver. This was no simple animal. Whatever it was, it understood what had just happened. "What are you?" Maya whispered. The creature didn't answer, of course, but it pressed against the bars of the cage, not trying to escape, but almost like it was trying to get closer to her. After a moment, Maya started walking again. She needed to get back to her quarters. She needed safety and time to think, and maybe access to the station's database to figure out what she had just bought for 3 credits. The human residential sector was on the other side of the station, but Maya knew the service corridors well enough to navigate. It took her nearly an hour, moving carefully, listening for any sounds of pursuit. By the time she reached her tiny room, her arms were shaking from holding the cage for so long. She locked the door behind her and set the cage down gently on her small table. The room was barely 10 feet square, with a narrow bed, a storage unit, and a basic food processor built into the wall. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and right now it felt like the safest place in the galaxy. Maya collapsed onto her bed and stared at the ceiling. Her mind raced with questions. What was a phoenix? Why had everyone reacted like that? And most importantly, what had she just gotten herself into? The creature in the cage chirped again, softer this time. Maya sat up and looked at it. Those golden eyes watched her with what seemed like patience, like it knew she would figure things out eventually. "Well," Maya said quietly, "I guess we're in this together now, whatever this is." She had no idea how right she was. She had no idea that her simple act of kindness, spending 3 credits on a dying creature in a forgotten corner of a market, had just changed the course of her life, and possibly the fate of the entire galaxy. All she knew was that something extraordinary was in that cage, and somehow, impossibly, it had chosen her. Maya sat on the floor of her tiny room, her back against the wall, and watched the creature in the cage. Her heart rate had finally slowed to normal, but her mind still raced with questions. She needed to understand what she had found, what had caused that moment of shocked silence in the marketplace, and why people were suddenly willing to pay fortunes for something that had been labeled as worthless minutes before. The creature stirred. It lifted its head slowly, as if the effort cost it dearly, those golden eyes fixed on Maya, and she felt an odd sensation in her chest, like a gentle tug or a warm pulse. The feeling wasn't painful, just strange and unfamiliar. Maya made a decision. She crawled forward and carefully opened the cage door. The creature didn't rush out or try to escape. Instead, it took one shaky step forward, then another. Its legs could barely support its weight. When it reached the edge of the cage opening, it stumbled, and Maya instinctively reached out to catch it. The moment her hands touched its scales, that warm sensation in her chest intensified. It spread through her body like sunlight breaking through clouds. The creature made a soft sound, almost like a purr, and she felt something that wasn't quite emotion but resembled contentment. "You're so weak," Maya whispered. She could feel the creature's ribs beneath its scales, could see how its body trembled with exhaustion. "When's the last time you ate or drank anything?" She set the creature gently on her bed and hurried to her small sink. She filled her only cup with water and brought it back, holding it carefully as she offered it to the creature. At first it just stared at the water. Then, as if remembering what water was, it dipped its head and drank desperately, its small tongue lapping at the liquid with increasing energy. When the cup was empty, Maya refilled it twice more. The creature drank all of it. Already it seemed slightly stronger, its movements less shaky. She opened her food storage and found a protein ration bar, broke off small pieces and offered them. The creature sniffed the food carefully before eating, taking each piece from her fingers with surprising gentleness. Over the next hour, Maya watched as subtle changes began. The dull gray of the creature's scales started to show hints of color underneath, like paint washing off to reveal the original surface. Deep crimson appeared at the edges of the scales with threads of gold tracing patterns she hadn't noticed before. The creature's breathing became steadier, deeper, more regular. Maya pulled out her personal data pad and accessed the station's general database. She searched for small dragon-like creature and got thousands of results. She tried golden eyes, scales, wings, and got even more. She added valuable and rare and started getting somewhere, but the results were still too broad. Creatures from hundreds of worlds matched parts of her description. She was about to try another search when her door chimed. Not a knock, but the formal chime that meant someone was requesting entry through the door panel. Maya froze. Her room didn't get visitors. She barely knew anyone on the station, Miss Collins. The voice came through the door's small speaker, smooth and professional. We represent the Collectors Guild. We understand you made an interesting purchase today in the lower markets. We would very much like to discuss it with you. There would be substantial compensation, of course. Maya's blood ran cold. She had heard of the Collectors Guild, everyone had. They were legal, technically, but their reputation was dark. They acquired rare specimens for wealthy clients, and they didn't take no for an answer. There were stories of people who refused to sell to them, people who ended up in accidents or disappeared entirely. She didn't respond. She barely breathed. The creature on her bed had gone absolutely still, as if it too sensed the danger. Miss Collins, we can make you very wealthy. Whatever you paid for that creature, we'll multiply it by 1,000, 10,000. Please, let's talk reasonably. Still Maya said nothing. After a long moment, she heard footsteps walking away. But she knew they wouldn't give up. The guild never gave up. Her datapad buzzed with an incoming message. She looked at it, expecting another contact from the guild, but the sender was listed as unknown. The message was brief and urgent. Get off this station. That's a Draxian Phoenix. If they identify it completely, you'll both be dead by morning. Docking Bay 7, berth 23. Ship called the Wandering Star. Captain owes me a favor. Go now. Before Maya could respond or even process what she had read, the message deleted itself. The text vanished from her screen as if it had never existed. Maya stared at her datapad, then at the creature, then at the door. Her mind worked quickly, weighing her options. She could ignore the message. She could try to contact station security. She could attempt to hide here and hope the guild lost interest, but deep down she knew none of those options would work. The guild was persistent, and whoever had sent that message had known about the Phoenix immediately. That meant others knew too. Her little room wasn't safe anymore. The creature, the Phoenix, made a small sound. Maya looked at it and saw those golden eyes watching her intently. She felt that sensation in her chest again, stronger now, and with it came an impression that wasn't quite words but felt like meaning. Trust. Move. Together. Okay, Maya said quietly. Okay, we're going, she packed quickly. She didn't own much, which made it easier. Her clothes fit in a small bag. Her datapad, her credit chip, her few personal items. She wrapped the Phoenix carefully in her spare blanket, creating a bundle that looked like she was just carrying laundry or supplies. The Phoenix settled into the blanket without complaint, as if it understood the need for disguise. Maya checked the corridor outside her room. It was empty, but she could hear voices in the distance. She went the opposite direction, toward the service passages again. Her worker ID would get her through the station's maintenance areas, and from there she could reach the docking bays without using the main corridors. The journey felt endless. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed to hide a pursuer. She kept expecting guild members to appear around every corner, or station security to stop her for questioning. But somehow she made it through the maze of passages without incident. Docking Bay 7 was one of the smaller bays, used mostly by independent traders and transport ships. Maya found berth 23 and stopped, staring at the ship docked there. The Wandering Star was old, that was obvious. Its hull showed signs of repairs and repainting from multiple decades of service. But it was clean, well-maintained, and its engines hummed with the sound of good care. As Maya approached, the cargo ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics. A woman stood at the top, silhouetted against the ship's interior lights. She was probably in her 50s with short gray hair and the weathered look of someone who had spent years in space. She wore a captain's jacket that had seen better days but was clean and proper. "You Maya Collins?" the woman called down. Maya nodded, suddenly unable to find her voice. "I'm Captain Lydia Grant. Get aboard before station security decides to scan this bay. We're leaving in 3 minutes, whether you're secured or not." Maya ran up the ramp. The moment she was inside, Captain Grant hit a panel and the ramp began closing. "Cargo hold is through there," she said, pointing. "Strap in. Things are about to get interesting." Maya barely had time to find a seat and secure the straps before the ship lurched. Through a small viewport, she watched as the docking bay doors opened and the wandering star pulled free of the berth. Behind them, she saw security vessels beginning to converge on the bay they had just left. Captain Grant's voice came over the intercom. "Departure control is asking questions. I'm giving them the runaround, but we need to clear the station's gravity well fast. Hold on." The ship accelerated hard. Maya was pressed back into her seat, the bundle with the Phoenix held tight against her chest. She felt the creature shift inside the blanket, heard it make small sounds that might have been distress or might have been something else entirely. Minutes ticked by. Through the viewport, Maya watched as the station grew smaller behind them. Security ships followed but didn't fire. They were in legal departure lanes, and so far, Captain Grant hadn't done anything that would justify being shot at. Then, suddenly, the stars stretched and blurred. The sensation of jumping to faster-than-light travel hit Maya's stomach like a punch. The Phoenix chirped loudly, and that warm feeling in her chest spiked so intensely that she gasped. When the sensation faded and the stars became steady points again, Captain Grant's voice returned. "We're clear." FTL engaged. "Whatever trouble you're in, we just left it behind for now." There was a pause. "Come up to the bridge, Maya Collins. We need to talk about what you're carrying." Maya unbuckled carefully and made her way through the ship, still holding the blanketed Phoenix. The wandering star was small but efficient, with narrow corridors and compact spaces. She found the bridge at the front, a small room with pilot controls and a few other stations. Captain Grant sat in the pilot's chair, her hands moving over controls with practiced ease. "Let me see it," she said without turning around. "Let me see what all this fuss is about." Maya hesitated, then carefully unwrapped the Phoenix. In just the few hours since leaving the marketplace, it had changed even more. It was slightly larger, perhaps the size of a small dog now. Its scales were no longer gray at all, but deep crimson edged with brilliant gold. Captain Grant made coffee while she talked. The smell filled the small galley, and Maya found herself grateful for the simple, normal act of sitting at a table with a warm cup in her hands. The Phoenix, which had grown bold enough to leave Maya's lap, perched on the edge of the table and watched them both with intelligent golden eyes. "Thousands of years ago," Captain Grant began, "there was an empire called the Draxian Empire. They controlled hundreds of star systems and were the most powerful civilization in known space. And they had the Phoenixes as companions." Maya wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, listening carefully. The Phoenixes weren't pets or tools. They were partners. They bonded with individuals, shared their life force, their strength, their knowledge. A person bonded with a Phoenix could live longer, heal faster, sense danger before it arrived. And the Phoenixes could do even more. They could bond with entire ships, making them nearly impossible to destroy. Some stories say they could share thoughts and memories across entire star systems. The Phoenix chirped softly, as if agreeing with the story. But then, the Draxian Empire fell. There was a war, a terrible one, and when it was over, the Phoenixes were gone. Most people think they all died. Some scholars believe they went extinct, but there were always rumors. Stories of Phoenixes in stasis, hidden away, sleeping in forgotten corners of space. Waiting. Waiting for what? Maya asked. Captain Grant looked at the Phoenix, then at Maya. No one knows. Maybe for the right time. Maybe for the right people. But what I do know is that governments, collectors, crime syndicates, they've all been searching for Phoenixes for centuries. There are standing bounties worth more money than you can imagine, not just because they're valuable, but because of what they represent. Power. The kind of power that could change everything. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. So everyone's going to be looking for us. Yes, the Collectors Guild was just the beginning. Once word spreads that there's a confirmed Phoenix sighting, and that it's bonded with someone, every major power in the galaxy will start hunting. Captain Grant took a sip of her coffee. The question is, what do you want to do about it? Before Maya could answer, the ship's alarms blared. Red lights flashed along the corridor, and Captain Grant was on her feet instantly, running for the bridge. Maya followed, the Phoenix flying behind her on wings that seemed too small to work but somehow kept it airborne. Captain Grant dropped into her pilot seat and pulled up sensor displays. 3 ships just dropped out of FTL behind us. They're hailing us, but I recognize the signatures. Guild vessels. She looked back at Maya. How bad do you want to keep that Phoenix? Maya didn't hesitate. She scooped up the Phoenix, feeling its warmth against her chest. Feeling that bond between them that had been growing stronger every hour. We don't give up. Not ever. Captain Grant's face split into a fierce grin. Good answer, strap in. This is going to get rough. The next several minutes were chaos. Captain Grant threw the Wandering Star into maneuvers that made Maya's stomach flip. They dove toward a nearby asteroid field, weaving between tumbling rocks while the guild ships followed in pursuit. The ship's hull rang with the sound of small debris impacts. They're gaining, Captain Grant said through gritted teeth. This ship wasn't built for combat runs. They're going to get a weapons lock soon. Maya held the Phoenix tighter. She could feel the creature's heart beating rapidly against her palms. Could sense something building inside it like pressure before a storm. The warm sensation in her chest that had become familiar now turned hot, almost burning. The Phoenix spread its wings. They were larger now somehow, spanning nearly 2 feet even though that should have been impossible given its size just minutes ago. It opened its mouth and sang. The sound was unlike anything Maya had ever heard. It resonated through the ship's hull, through her bones, through her very blood. It was beautiful and terrible and ancient all at once. And as it sang, everything changed. The ship's lights brightened. The engines, which had been straining, suddenly roared with new power. Every display on the bridge lit up with readings that showed systems operating at levels they had never reached before. The shields, barely functional before, now glowed with energy strong enough to deflect the asteroids that struck them. Captain Grant stared at her control panels in complete shock. What in the name of every star is happening? Maya didn't know how to explain it, but she could feel it through her bond with the Phoenix. It was sharing its energy with the ship, enhancing it, protecting it. She felt the strain it caused the Phoenix, felt how much effort it took, but the creature didn't stop singing. Fly, Maya shouted over the sound. Whatever it's doing, use it. Captain Grant didn't need to be told twice. She pushed the ship into a series of maneuvers that should have torn it apart. But with the Phoenix's enhancement, the Wandering Star moved like a fighter craft instead of an old freighter. They wove through the asteroid field at impossible speeds, pulling moves that left the pursuing guild ships scrambling to keep up. One of the guild ships tried to follow too closely and clipped an asteroid. Its shields failed and it spun out of control. The other 2 backed off slightly, more cautious now. Captain Grant saw her opening. She plotted a jump to FTL, a course that would take them through a narrow gap in the asteroid field. It was a dangerous jump, one that required perfect timing and more power than the ship should have been able to generate. But with the Phoenix still singing, still pouring its energy into the ship, they had that power. Captain Grant hit the jump drive and reality bent around them. For a moment, Maya felt like she could see everything at once, past and present and future, all the possibilities flowing together. Then they were in FTL, racing away from their pursuers at speeds that made distance meaningless. The Phoenix stopped singing. The sudden silence was almost painful. The creature slumped in Maya's arms, exhausted but alive. The warm sensation in her chest faded to a gentle pulse. The ship's systems returned to normal levels, though several displays showed readings that didn't make sense, like the systems couldn't quite believe what they had just done. Captain Grant sat frozen in her pilot seat, her hand still on the controls. That, she said slowly, should not have been possible. This ship can't do those things. The engines aren't powerful enough. The shields aren't strong enough. We should be dead or captured right now. Maya stroked the Phoenix's scales gently. It helped us. It made the ship stronger. It didn't just make the ship stronger, kid. It made the ship into something else entirely. For those few minutes, we weren't flying a freighter. We were flying something that belonged in the Draxian fleet. Captain Grant turned to look at them. That's what the old stories talked about. Phoenix-bonded ships that couldn't be beaten. I thought it was legend, exaggeration, but I just lived it. The Phoenix made a small, tired sound. Maya could feel its exhaustion through their bond, could sense how much that effort had cost it. It needs to rest, she said. We both do. Captain Grant nodded and stood up, setting the ship on automatic pilot. My quarters are down the hall. You can use them. I'll sleep in the crew cabin. And Maya? She waited until Maya looked at her. Thank you for not giving up. On the Phoenix, I mean. It would have been easier to let them take it. Safer. Maya looked down at the creature in her arms, at its brilliant scales and those golden eyes that held such intelligence and trust. I couldn't. The moment I saw it in that cage, I knew I had to help. I didn't know what it was or what would happen. I just knew I couldn't walk away. That's probably why it chose you, Captain Grant said quietly. Phoenixes don't bond randomly. They never did. They choose people based on character, on compassion, on the capacity for growth. When that Phoenix woke up in that cage, dying and alone, it was testing you, and you passed. That night, Maya lay in Captain Grant's small cabin with the Phoenix curled up on the pillow next to her head. She was exhausted, her body aching from stress and adrenaline crash, but her mind wouldn't settle. She kept thinking about what Captain Grant had said. The Phoenix had chosen her. It had tested her, and somehow, impossibly, she had passed. She fell asleep without meaning to, and she dreamed. But these weren't her dreams. She saw vast cities made of crystal towers that reached toward alien skies. She felt the rush of wind beneath wings that spanned hundreds of feet. She experienced memories that weren't hers, memories that stretched across centuries. Joy and loss, battle and peace, love and loneliness, and above all, an aching emptiness from years upon years of sleeping alone in the dark. She woke, gasping. The Phoenix was perched on her chest, its golden eyes locked with hers. In that moment, Maya understood. This wasn't a pet. This wasn't even just an intelligent creature. This was a being that had lived longer than human civilization, that had seen the rise and fall of empires, that carried within it the accumulated wisdom of an entire species. And it had chosen to bond with her. A nobody. A merchant's apprentice who had spent 3 credits on a dying creature out of simple kindness. Through their bond, she felt the Phoenix's response. Not words, but meaning. She had been chosen not despite being a nobody, but because of who she was. Because when she saw suffering, she stopped to help. Because when offered the easy path, she chose the hard one. Because Captain Grant took them to a station called Haven's Rest, a remote outpost built into a hollowed asteroid at the edge of explored space. It was the kind of place where people came to disappear, where questions weren't asked and records weren't kept too carefully. The perfect place to hide while they figured out their next move. Maya rented a small apartment in the station's residential ring, using the credit account Captain Grant had quietly set up for her. Consider it payment for the most exciting week of my life, the captain had said with a grin. Besides, I have a feeling you're going to need resources. Lots of them. The apartment was small but comfortable, with actual windows that looked out at the asteroid field surrounding the station. It was larger than her quarters on Velcara had been, with a separate sleeping area and enough space for the Phoenix to move around freely. And the Phoenix was growing. Fast. In just 1 week of regular feeding and the steady flow of energy through their bond, the creature had grown to the size of a large dog. Its wings, when fully extended, now spanned nearly 8 feet. The colors of its scales had deepened into shades that seemed to shift in different light, sometimes appearing like molten metal, other times like living flame. When it moved, it left trails of warmth in the air. Maya had started calling it Ember. She wasn't sure where the name came from, if it was something she chose or something that came through their bond, but it felt right. And Ember seemed to respond to it, making a pleased sound whenever she said the name. Their bond grew stronger every day. Maya could now sense Ember's emotions clearly. When she felt anxious, she would feel Ember's ancient calm flowing through their connection, steadying her. When she was uncertain about something, she would feel his confidence, his absolute certainty that they would figure it out together. And sometimes in quiet moments, she still experienced fragments of his memories, glimpses of a civilization so advanced and beautiful that it made her want to cry. But the bond worked both ways. Ember experienced humanity through Maya's eyes, her memories of Earth, of her family, of the first time she had looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. He learned about human music, human laughter, human resilience. She could sense his fascination with these new experiences, his delight in discovering things he had never known during his long existence. One morning, as Maya sat by the window drinking coffee and watching the asteroids drift past, her communication pad buzzed with an incoming message. She tensed, expecting another threat or demand, but when she opened it, the message was from the same anonymous source that had helped her escape Velcara Station. "You've done better than I hoped, Maya Collins," the message read. "The Phoenix has chosen well, but you need to understand what's coming. The Collectors Guild is the least of your problems. There are governments that will hunt you, corporations that will try to buy you, and fanatics who believe phoenixes should either be worshipped or destroyed. You can't run forever. Eventually, you'll need to decide what you're fighting for. When you're ready to learn the truth, come to the Meridian Nexus. Ask for Helen Price. She'll find you." The message included coordinates for the Meridian Nexus, a massive trading station at the intersection of 5 major space routes. Maya had heard of it but had never been there. It was one of the busiest places in known space, a melting pot of hundreds of species and cultures. Ember chirped from his spot near the window. Maya looked at him and felt a clear impression through their bond. Purpose, choice, forward. He wanted to go. He wanted to find this Helen Price and learn what was happening, why phoenixes were returning now after thousands of years of absence. Maya spent 3 days thinking about it. She could stay here at Haven's Rest, keep hiding, keep running. But Captain Grant's words echoed in her mind. The Phoenix had chosen her based on her character, on her capacity for growth. If she spent the rest of her life hiding, was she really living up to that choice? She contacted Captain Grant and asked if the Wandering Star could take them to the Meridian Nexus. The captain agreed without hesitation. "I had a feeling you'd want to go eventually. And honestly, I'm curious now too. This is the biggest thing to happen in the galaxy in centuries, and you're right at the center of it." The journey took a week, with careful route planning to avoid the major shipping lanes where they might be recognized. During that time, Ember continued to grow. By the time they reached the Nexus, he was the size of a small horse, magnificent and impossible to hide. The Meridian Nexus was breathtaking. It was a massive ring structure kilometers across that housed millions of beings and processed more trade in a single day than some planetary systems saw in a year. As the Wandering Star approached, Maya felt a mix of fear and excitement. This was where she would get answers. They docked in one of the independent trader berths. Captain Grant had contacts at the Nexus who could help them move through the station without drawing too much attention, but Ember was a problem. There was no way to hide a creature his size. In the end, they used a specialized harness that marked Ember as a registered companion animal. It was technically legal, and while it would definitely draw attention, it wouldn't immediately trigger security alerts. Ember tolerated the harness with dignity, seeming to understand its necessity. Following the instructions from the message, Maya made her way to the upper gardens in Section 7. These were green spaces filled with plants from hundreds of worlds, places where residents could experience something like nature even in the metal confines of a space station. She found the Earth Plant Conservatory and sat on a bench to wait, with Ember settling beside her like a loyal dog, though his scales and wings made it clear he was nothing of the sort. As evening cycle approached, an elderly woman entered the conservatory. She was human, perhaps 70 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that held both warmth and strength. She wore simple clothes but carried herself with the confidence of someone used to authority. She walked directly to Maya's bench and sat down without asking. "You must be Maya," she said. Her voice was gentle but firm. "I'm Helen Price. And you?" She looked at Ember with something like reverence. "Are absolutely magnificent." Ember made a pleased sound, and Maya felt amusement ripple through their bond. He liked this woman. "I'm going to tell you things that most people in the galaxy don't know," Helen continued. "Things that powerful forces want to keep secret. Are you ready?" Maya nodded, her heart racing. Helen took a breath and began. "The phoenixes didn't vanish by accident. They didn't die out. They chose to sleep. They saw what was coming, a future where they would be enslaved, turned into weapons, used for war and domination. So they went into stasis and scattered themselves across the galaxy, hidden, waiting for the right time and the right people." "What makes someone the right person?" Maya asked. The phoenixes choose based on potential, not power or status. They look for character, for compassion, for the capacity to grow and change. When Ember woke in that cage, dying and alone, he was testing you. He needed to know if you would help him even when it cost you, even when it made no sense. And you passed that test. Maya looked at Ember, who met her gaze with those brilliant golden eyes. She had wondered so many times why he had chosen her, an ordinary person with no special skills or training. Now she understood. He hadn't chosen her despite being ordinary. He had chosen her because of the choices she made, the person she was. There are others like you, Helen said. Not many, but some. Humans and aliens who found sleeping phoenixes, who formed bonds. We've been gathering quietly, preparing because the galaxy is heading toward another crisis. The Ascendancy, a coalition of powerful governments and corporations, is trying to establish control over resource-rich systems. They're building weapons, forcing compliance, crushing resistance, and now they've learned about the returning phoenixes. They want them as tools, as symbols of their power. What do you need us to do? Maya asked. Helen smiled. First, you need to learn what you and Ember can truly become together. Then, Maya Collins, you're going to help us show the galaxy that there's a better way. That partnership is stronger than domination. That compassion is more powerful than force. Through their bond, Maya felt Ember's complete agreement. This was what he had been waiting for. This was why he had woken up after thousands of years. Not to be a weapon or a tool, but to be a partner in building something better. Where do we start? Maya asked. Helen stood and gestured for them to follow. There's a place I want to show you. A facility where others like you are training, learning what they can do. Come with me, both of you. It's time you met your family. As Maya walked beside Helen with Ember keeping pace at her side, she thought about how much her life had changed. A few weeks ago, she had been a nobody, an apprentice with 3 credits and simple dreams. Now she was bonded to an ancient being of legend, at the center of events that could reshape the galaxy. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. But as she felt Ember's steady presence through their bond, felt his absolute confidence in her, she realized she was ready. They would face this together, whatever came, and maybe, just maybe, they could make a difference. Helen took them to a ship docked in a private berth, a sleek vessel that was clearly designed for speed rather than cargo. They traveled for 2 days, jumping through several systems before arriving at coordinates that showed nothing on any official star charts. Then Helen input a special code, and suddenly sensors revealed what had been hidden, a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into a facility. As they entered through the concealed docking bay, Maya's breath caught. The interior of the asteroid was vast, with multiple levels and open spaces, and everywhere she looked she saw phoenixes. They perched on platforms, soared through the open air, and rested beside their bonded partners. Each phoenix was unique in size and coloring, but all shared that same ancient intelligence in their eyes. There are 17 others here, Helen explained as they walked through the facility. 17 bonds, 17 partnerships. Some are new like yours. Others have existed for years. We've been gathering slowly, carefully, preparing for when we would need to reveal ourselves. Maya saw humans, Valorians, Threll, Cathari, and species she didn't even recognize, each with their phoenix companion. A young Threll woman sat in meditation with a phoenix that was colored deep blue and silver. A human man in his 40s practiced some kind of combat form while his crimson and black phoenix circled overhead. 2 Cathari siblings worked together with their matching golden phoenixes, their movements perfectly synchronized. Over the next weeks, Maya trained. She learned that the bond with Ember wasn't just emotional, it was a channel for abilities that seemed impossible. She could share his enhanced senses, seeing farther, hearing more clearly. When they were fully synchronized, her body healed faster from injuries. Once, during a training accident, she broke her wrist. With Ember's help, it healed completely in 3 days instead of weeks. But the most remarkable discovery was what Helen called the resonance. When multiple Phoenix-bonded partners worked together, their abilities amplified each other. Maya practiced with a woman named Kate Murphy and her phoenix, a creature colored pure white with hints of blue. When they focused together, they could project shields of energy that stopped physical objects. When 4 of them worked as a team, they could move heavy equipment with their combined will alone. It's not magic, Helen explained during one training session. It's a form of energy manipulation that the phoenixes understand naturally. Through the bond, they can teach you to access it too. The Draxian Empire was built on this kind of cooperation. Imagine entire fleets working together, sharing energy, protecting each other. That's what the old Phoenix bonds could do. Maya also learned from the others. Kate had found her Phoenix in an illegal research facility and had freed it at great personal risk. A quiet man named Lucas Chen had discovered his Phoenix, a gentle green and gold creature, in an ancient temple on a forgotten colony world. Each story was different, but all shared the same core. Ordinary people who had made extraordinary choices, who had chosen compassion over personal gain. One evening, Helen gathered everyone together for a briefing. The mood was serious and Maya felt tension in the air. Ember pressed close to her side, offering comfort through their bond. The Ascendancy has captured 3 Phoenixes and their bonded partners, Helen said without preamble.
They're being held in a facility called the Obsidian Keep, a military research station in Ascendancy-controlled space.
They're trying to break the bonds to find a way to control the Phoenixes directly. Angry murmurs rippled through the group. Maya felt Ember's distress through their bond, a deep pain at the thought of Phoenixes being enslaved. We can't let that continue, Helen continued. If they succeed in breaking even one bond, they'll hunt down all of us. The choice the Phoenixes made thousands of years ago to sleep rather than serve will mean nothing. We need to rescue them. That's suicide, someone said. The Obsidian Keep is one of the most defended facilities in Ascendancy space. Maybe, Helen agreed. But we have something they don't anticipate. We have the resonance. We have partners who trust us completely. And we have surprise. She looked around at all of them. I'm not ordering anyone to come. This is voluntary, but I'm going and I'm asking for help. Maya didn't hesitate. She stood up, Ember rising beside her. We're in. One by one, others stood as well. Kate and her Phoenix, Lucas and his, the Threll woman with the blue and silver Phoenix. By the time the count was finished, everyone had volunteered. Not a single person chose to stay behind. The plan took days to develop. The Obsidian Keep orbited a gas giant in a system with heavy military traffic. It was protected by warships, automated defense platforms, and elite security forces. A direct assault would fail, so they planned something more subtle and more audacious. Captain Grant agreed to lead a diversionary fleet of independent traders who owed her favors. They would approach the system with legitimate cargo manifests, creating enough confusion and traffic to distract the defense forces. Meanwhile, Maya and 5 other bonded partners would approach in small shielded craft that would be nearly invisible to sensors. Ember had grown even larger during the training. He was now the size of a small spacecraft himself, and Helen had explained that he could survive in the vacuum of space. In the old days, Phoenixes often flew alongside ships during battles. They're creatures of energy as much as matter. Space won't harm him. The day of the mission arrived. Maya suited up in light armor that Helen's people had prepared, designed to protect her while not restricting movement. She checked her equipment one last time, then looked at Ember. Through their bond, she felt his determination, his readiness, and underneath it all, his absolute trust in her. Together, she whispered. Ember's response echoed in her mind, not in words, but in pure meaning. Always together. They launched from the hidden facility in 3 small craft. As they approached the target system, Maya watched through the viewport as Ember flew beside them in open space. His wings, which spanned hundreds of feet now, caught starlight and seemed to glow from within. He was magnificent and terrifying, a creature of legend made real. Captain Grant's diversion worked perfectly. The defense forces scrambled to process the sudden influx of trader traffic, their attention divided. The small craft slipped through the confusion, approaching the Obsidian Keep from its shadow side where sensors were weakest. Then Ember and the other Phoenixes moved ahead, creating what Helen had called a resonance shield. Their combined energy created a bubble of distortion that made sensors read empty space. The craft slipped through the defense perimeter undetected. The assault on the keep itself was controlled chaos. The Phoenix-bonded partners moved with perfect coordination, their enhanced abilities and shared consciousness allowing them to anticipate each other's actions. They disabled security systems, knocked out defensive weapons, and fought their way through to the detention center without killing anyone. Helen had been clear about that. They were here to rescue, not to murder. Maya found herself moving with confidence and skill she had never known she possessed. When guards appeared, she reacted before thinking. disarming them with movements that flowed through her bond with Ember. She didn't question it, just trusted the ancient knowledge that Ember shared with her. They reached the detention center and found the 3 captured phoenixes. The creatures were weak, chained with specialized restraints that disrupted their energy. Their bonded partners were in adjacent cells, drugged and isolated to prevent them from connecting with their companions. When Maya broke the first restraint and the separated partners reconnected, the surge of released energy blew out every electrical system in the entire detention wing. The other phoenixes, sensing their kind's freedom, sang out in joy. The sound resonated through the station's structure, making the metal itself vibrate. Helen had prepared a broadcast to transmit across every major communication network. As they fled the keep with the rescued partners, the message went out. It showed all 20 phoenixes together, a sight that hadn't been seen in thousands of years. They flew in formation like a fleet, radiating power and purpose. Helen's voice accompanied the images. This is a message to the Ascendancy, and any others who seek to chain the ancient guardians. The phoenixes have returned, but not as weapons. They are partners, bonded with those they choose across all species. They offer protection, wisdom, and hope for a better future. We will not be captured. We will not be controlled, and we will stand against those who would enslave any sentient being, human, alien, or phoenix. The age of domination is ending. The age of partnership has begun. The escape was successful, though barely. Ascendancy forces pursued them, but the combined power of 20 phoenixes was more than any defense force could handle. They jumped to safety, leaving chaos and confusion behind. The message spread across the galaxy like fire. Some governments immediately condemned them as terrorists. Others, particularly smaller systems that had felt the Ascendancy's pressure, offered quiet support. The images of the phoenixes, especially the shot of Maya and Ember flying together through the debris field, became symbols of resistance and hope. But the victory came with a price. The Ascendancy declared all Phoenix-bonded partners enemies. Bounties were placed. Arrest warrants were